Welcome to Alpha Wolf's Den. It's here that we seek enlightenment. Alpha Wolf Trading recognizes that the most successful companies in the world at one point had no earnings. There's a lot more to a company than just its earnings report. That's why here at Alpha Wolf's Den, we interview executive teams. We want to get to know management. We want to understand the vision, the mission, the strategic drivers, the plan. We want to separate fact from fluff. This is not a paid for promotion interview. This is solely wanting to know the company's vision, mission, their critical success factors, their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and the threats. We want to know the long-term objective and the tactical initiatives that leadership plans to implement to achieve success. We want to know about the company's debt, the cap structure, what it's going to take for them to become self-sustaining and stop burning through cash. We want to know management's previous failures, challenges, hurdles, how they overcame them, or what they learned that they can apply in their current role. We're trying to identify the risk and the reward. And oftentimes, it's strong leadership that makes the difference between success and failure. Here at Alpha Wolf Trading, we are looking for the hidden gems. And I hope you enjoy this interview because this is one of those companies that I think could be a hidden gem. Please understand that this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice, and I am not a financial advisor. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with another CEO interview of a very exciting company, one that I have been following for quite a while. I've been in the stock. I've done quite well in the stock. I have gotten out of the stock, and I mean, I'm constantly following the story. You know, you have to do as a full-time investor, you got to take the profits when they're there. And that's what I've done, but I am actively looking to build back into this company. I want to thank Desmond Wheatley, who is the CEO of BEEM Global, which was formerly
Envision Solar.
Envision Solar, right. Which I like BEEM Global much better. I like the logo. I like everything about it.
So do I.
So Desmond, thank you so much for coming in and doing this interview. I will get into the company and all the products and services that you provide, and why I think it is not only for the future of renewable energy and our ecosystem for electric vehicles across this country important in that respect, but it also is a power supply source that could be a safety concern for this country. And not enough people recognize it or even talk about it, but we're going to do that. We're going to get to that in a minute. What I'd like you to do before we do that is give us a background on who Desmond Wheatley is and what brought him to BEEM, and a little bit of your track record getting here. How about that?
Well, first of all, let me say it's a great pleasure to be here, Tim. Thanks very much for devoting time to my favorite story, certainly the one that I'm fully engaged with. Anybody that knows me will tell you that I could probably get pretty boring, because all I ever want to do is talk about BEEM and the things that we do and the change that we're bringing, the very positive change that we're bringing. And at the end of the day, doing it in a way with our focus entirely on profitability and making our investors, our employees, and frankly our customers as well better off. So it's a unique and really fantastic opportunity for somebody like me, and I'm honored to be in the position that I'm in. Let's not spend too much time on me, because it's the least interesting part of the story. But I'll just tell you, you may have gathered I'm not from Pocatello, Idaho. I'm originally from Scotland, but I'm a very proud to be living in the United States of America. I love this country. I love everything that it stands for. Recognize that it's made lots and lots of mistakes, but that's all part of evolving and growing. And I think in general, it's been a great shining beacon for the rest of the world. And by the way, getting energy under control, and particularly where it relates to transportation, is a big part of supporting the America that I care about. That's been absolutely painted to us in technicolor here with the recent events in Ukraine, the really disgraceful reliance upon foreign sources of power or of energy that often come from people who would otherwise not be our friends. So part of my history, I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And I can tell you that I witnessed things over there which lead me to believe that we shouldn't be reliant upon certain members of the community over there either. And so to be involved in a company now where I'm making it possible for Americans to drive on sunshine. It's our sunshine. It comes to us, by the grace of nature or God or whatever you want to believe in. But it's free, and we've been wasting it throughout our entire history. Well, we're now not wasting it anymore. We're now making it possible to drive on sunshine. And if you think about the trillions of dollars and of our money, treasure, young people, and everything else that we've spent defending our access to foreign sources of energy, that's something that I want to put a stop to as quickly as possible, having witnessed it firsthand. So yeah, I'm from Scotland originally. I've been involved in a lot of different industries, telecommunications, security, infrastructure, close protection, but really energy for the last couple of decades. I've been with BEEM now for over 10 years. That takes me by surprise, because I can tell you it doesn't feel like that. But yeah, it's been over a decade of my life I've committed to this company. I have never done anything I like a tenth as much as what I'm doing right now. And I've been very fortunate in life. I've had a very varied and often exciting, sometimes quite a lot more exciting than I wanted it to be, career. But what I'm doing right now is just a magnificent opportunity, because we're going to make a lot of money. We're going to do very well by our investors. We're going to have a very good impact on the environment. If you care about that, you don't have to care about it, but we are going to. We're going to have a very good impact on the economy, because the simple fact of the matter is that Americans and people across the globe, in fact, spend vast sums of their so-called disposable income on fuel, which goes out of their tailpipe, and again, often enriches regimes that we would otherwise not be friends with. So we're going to have a fantastic effect on the economy. And we're going to have a fantastic effect on the geopolitical environment as well, because real energy independence, true energy independence, is when we can say that we will never, ever have to go to anybody else for energy ever again. And when we can say that, that has a profound impact on what becomes important to us from a defense point of view. We spend $50 billion a year defending the Straits of Hormuz. I've been there. It's a shithole. There's absolutely no reason that you'd want to go to the Straits of Hormuz at all, unless you were trying to get low and stable oil prices through there. That's a subsidy for the petrochemical industry by any other name. It's a massive subsidy as well. And you know something, Tim? It used to be that the United States was the largest importer of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, and so it was worthy defending it. Now we're second to the Chinese. And so I just want your listeners to know that right now our tax-paying dollars are being spent defending low and stable oil prices more for the Chinese than for ourselves. And the only thing worse than us doing it would be somebody else like them doing it. But at any rate, it's not sustainable and it's not a good idea. I want to see real energy security, working hard towards that. And BEEM Global is my little platform, becoming bigger every day to make that happen.
Let me, since you just touched on it, and let's really talk about the security angle just for a moment. And I will share with the viewers that it was back when the oil line the big oil line was held for ransom, the oil company. And it got me to thinking that, you know, if someone were to hack into our grid and take control of our grid and shut our grid down, I thought, my God, that would be catastrophic, right? And I really actually didn't even have, that was just off of my own thinking. I had no really clear view of how catastrophic. I just knew that it wouldn't be a good thing. And I started thinking about your product, and we're going to get into details of the product in a minute, but essentially, you know, you provide charging and power to remote areas without having to provide power from the grid to that area, right?
Yep.
You literally have a system that you bring over, you drop it down, and in, you know, 15 minutes or so, you have a full charging station for vehicles. But more importantly, you also have above even like floodwater level, right? You have outlets for emergency responders so that you can have power out there even in, you know, a natural disaster. So lots of really positive things there if you just kind of think about that for a minute. But from the security angle, having access to that power, or maybe in possibly, I don't know if you have cell repeaters or things like that are on there, but having access to that, if someone were to hack our grid, would be like essential. I mean, you could almost say that your product is a national security defense product that every FBI agency, CIA agency, every federal department should have at least 10 of these things in their parking lot. Just in case somebody takes over our grid. I mean, does that make sense to you? That was where my head was going. So what is your thought on that?
I think, Tim, you've hit one of the many nails that we hammer at right on the head. The simple fact of the matter is we are more reliant upon electricity than we have ever been at any time in our history. And you just have to take a few seconds to think about this. Think about all the things in your life now which are running on electricity, and increasingly untethered electricity, that were not doing so in the past. And when I say untethered, what I mean is you're relying on batteries to operate them. Right. I mean, really, from the sublime to the ridiculous, right? How many people now have, battery-powered leaf blowers and hedge trimmers and cordless screwdrivers and every other thing? But if you walk around your home, it looks like a sort of an airport, red blinking lights and green lights and all sorts of lights blinking all over the place nowadays, right? Everything that we do now relies upon electricity. And yet we are having more actually, it's not and yet. And partially because of that, we're having more blackouts and brownouts than we have ever had at any time in our history. Okay, so the thing that we rely on the most, if you think about it, air, water, if you really get into it, electricity comes next. Now, some people are going to say, he's crazy. Food clearly comes next. And what I'm going to say to you is, actually, you could even put electricity after air. And the reason for that is because we don't have water and we don't have food without electricity. Our infrastructure nowadays, I think it's over 40% of the electrical energy that California consumes goes into moving water around one way or another, certainly over 30%. So electricity is absolutely fundamental to everything that we do at the moment. And yet it's being delivered to us by an infrastructure, magnificent as it is. Don't get me wrong. The United States grid is the largest machine mankind has ever made. It's something we should all be tremendously proud of, but it's 100 years old. It's time for us to think about it differently, about the way that we do it. So electricity is more important to us than it's ever been. We use more of it than we've ever used, and yet it's more unreliable, or at least the traditional infrastructure that delivers it is more unreliable than it's ever been, or prone to failure, or encountering more failures than it's ever had. Now then add to that the fact that electricity is without a question the fuel of the future. There's no question about that anymore. Let me just briefly take you on a quick aside here. The United States is going to electrify all of its terrestrial transportation. And it's not because of what Biden says, or because of what tree huggers say, or because of what anybody else says. There are a couple of things driving this. The first one, absolutely fundamental and very important to understand, is that Europe is banning all but electric vehicles over the next couple of decades, starting in Norway in 2025. In 2030, the United Kingdom, where I'm originally from, all electric, everybody by 2040. Now, automotive manufacturers can no longer make one set of vehicles for Europe and another for the United States or for North America. It simply doesn't work like that anymore, not in the economy that we live in these days. And so even if the United States didn't want to electrify, there will not be anything but electric vehicles available in the next couple of decades. But here's the good news. The United States will want to electrify. This, I have always said, will be a consumer-led revolution, as they always are, right? Most technologies, if you think of just your iPhone, it's just 5 or 6 technologies that were actually funded by the US federal government in the first place. Touchscreens, GPS, the internet, cellular, all of these things were funded by the US government. And then somebody like Apple comes along and turns it into the most incredible gadget you've ever seen, right? But it's the consumer-led revolution that makes it really explode. Now, the same thing will happen with electric vehicles. We've got the introduction of the Ford F-150 Lightning, top-selling pickup truck in the United States for something like 42 years, top-selling vehicle in the United States, now available electric. What's the difference? Well, the electric one does 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds compared to 8 to 10 seconds for its diesel or gasoline brethren. It never needs to go to a gas station. It requires almost no maintenance, and it will power your home when the grid goes down. Can you imagine the consumer going down to a dealership and saying, no, thank you. I'd like the slower, clunkier, more maintenance-prone one that I can take the gas station and put $200 worth of gas in because the Russians are jerking our chain on gasoline. It just won't work like that in the future. It's going to take a while. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have plenty of people who will take a while to do it, but it's going to happen without a doubt. So now electricity becomes the fuel of the future. And by the way, we're powering airplanes and drones and all kinds of other technology as well, submersibles and everything else, not just cars and buses and trucks and everything else. So when electricity becomes the fuel of the future, and you combine that with the fact that we're more reliant upon it than we've ever been, well, once it's our fuel, now everything counts on it. You can't do anything without it anymore. And yet at the same time, it's more vulnerable. Think about for a second, Tim, the fact that we have a strategic petroleum reserve in this country. Why do we do that? Why do we store an expensive commodity underground? Because we know that we need it in the event that there's some kind of an interruption. We learned this in the 70s, yeah. And yet there's no strategic electric reserve. In fact, we are already at capacity in almost every market. This is why we have blackouts and brownouts when people turn up their air conditioning. It gets too hot in California, everybody turns up their air conditioning, and we have what we call a flex alert. Flex alerts are just the utility way of saying, I don't have enough product for you, so I'm going to start turning stuff off, okay? This would be like Amazon at Thanksgiving saying, we're going to deliver about 3/4 of the parcels because you're ordering too much shit, okay? It's just no other industry that could possibly operate like that, right? So yes, we are addressing that because our products operate entirely free of the grid. We provide the fuel that people will require without the centralized vulnerabilities and without any of the requirements that you have in connecting to the grid. They're completely independent of the grid. And they continue to generate and store electricity regardless of what's going on, whether the grid's being attacked or because there's not enough capacity or whatever else. And because they're made in a factory environment, they're incredibly scalable. This is there's nothing new in our thinking. We're just the Henry Ford of EV charging infrastructure. We just figured out how to mass produce this thing, pour it out of a factory and deploy it everywhere rapidly and highly scalably. And then you're right, yes, flood proof to 9.5 feet. Yes, they do have emergency power panels in them so that first responders or others can connect to the power, so they won't just keep the vehicles moving, but they'll also provide that vital energy during those types of events. And by the way, none of this is theory. All of this has happened and has happened regularly. We've had first responders. We've run COVID emergency centers. We've had all sorts of brave men and women in the first responder community using our products to provide energy during events where the grid went down. But I will take exception to one thing that you said, that you used the term in remote locations. The truth is, better
I
than
did that intentionally. I knew that was going to get under your skin.
Oh yeah. You're really getting me fired up here. Yeah, the truth is, better than 98% of the EV ARCs that we have deployed and of our products that we have deployed generally are in dense urban environments, because it turns out that that's where the need is greatest. And it's actually just as hard often to take power across a parking lot as it is to deliver into a national park or something. Now, believe me, we're in the national parks too. We're in those types of environments. But the truth is, New York City, for God's sakes, is our biggest municipal customer. We're deployed across the 5 boroughs. Why? Because we're providing vital fuel to the vital fleet vehicles that they're electrifying. And we're doing it in a way which is immune to the centralized failures that come along with the grid. And they, like, if you're running a vital, I'm charging police cars in New York City. What you dial 911 and they, well, sorry, we'll send a car over whenever Con Ed gets the power back up. I don't think so.
So it's funny. You took the bait. It's awesome.
I'm predictable. I'm definitely predictable.
It was awesome. I knew you were going to hate that word.
Yeah.
But you know, as I think about things, you know, one of the obvious things is that on a long trip, and a rest stop in the middle of nowhere, I live in Vegas, right? You live in San Diego.
Yep.
That trip between the two, you're in the middle of the desert, right? Rest stop, and what are you going to do? You're going to run a power line out to the rest stop in the middle of nowhere. What would that cost? I mean, yeah. Because the cost to just run it, and I want to make, and this is the point that I wanted to make, that cost would be probably unfathomable.
Yep.
The cost to run to a hotel or casino, the power line and the construction and the cost to put up a charging station could be what, over $100 grand.
Oh, well, yeah, it most often is.
Right. And it's going to take, I don't know how long, maybe 6 months, who knows, by the time you get all the permits and all the other stuff that you got to go through, as opposed to, hey, Desmond, I need 4 charging systems on my park, on the top of my parking structure, the top floor. When can I have them?
Yep.
How about tomorrow?
Yep.
And you don't have to pull any permits.
This is why we are deployed in rest areas in California for Caltrans, providing fast charging, a gas station type experience for people who are going down the highway. This is why we are, because of the immense cost, the immense environmental disruption, and the incredible time involved in going through the entire process to, yes, dig the trenches, pull the cables, do the switchgear upgrades, the grid upgrades and everything else like that, to provide a source of power, which, as I say, will not be there for you during a blackout or a brownout. This is why we're deployed in New York City, where it takes an average of 24 months to go through environmental impact studies, permitting, zoning, construction, electrical work, pouring concrete, waiting for it dry, and all that sort of stuff, to put a grid-tied charger in all but the simplest locations. We do the same thing in under 1 hour. Right? You never get a utility bill. There's no cost of construction. But people always say to me, well, what's the ROI on this? What's the break-even ROI on this? And by that, they mean kilowatt hours. And what I tell them is day one. Because the fact of the matter is, in almost every instance where we're deployed, our product costs less than the avoided cost of construction that would have been required to deliver a grid circuit to that location and pour the concrete and everything else. And then you get a lifetime of free energy. So if you think of it that way, if you look at the economics that way, there's no unit cost for the energy anymore, because just the avoided cost of construction paid for the product. And then all of the energy that's produced, of course, is coming, as I said, by the grace of God or nature or whatever you believe in. And so that zero unit cost of energy, by the way, opens up a whole lot of very interesting new business models too. Why is the fueling transaction the way the fueling transaction is today? Why for over 100 years have we driven up to a dispenser, watched a meter click over, and then parted with money to get fuel? Right? Well, because there was a tremendous underlying cost for the unit cost of energy and infrastructure and everything else that had to be returned very profitably, by the way. Not to the gas station guy, they don't make any money on fuel, but to the upstream people, make massive amounts of money on it. Well, what if there was no unit cost of energy? What might driving on sunshine look like in the future? Could you drive on sunshine for free as long as you have the lease on the vehicle? Could it be brought to you by some kind of a sponsorship program? Could it be like Wi-Fi, Tim? Think about Wi-Fi 10 years ago, you used to have to pay and it was very complicated to connect to it and all that sort of stuff. And yet now, every Starbucks you go into, you're going to get a free connection. Why? Because Starbucks cares more about selling you coffee than they do about selling you bits. Well, when there's no unit cost for energy, the same sort of thinking takes place, right? So part of what makes me so excited about this whole industry is that for over 100 years, we've had a diverse fuel source, right? So you've had gasoline for motorcycles and cars, you've had diesel for trucks and buses, you've had bunker oil for ships, kerosene for airplanes, but the fueling transaction has always been the same. Up to dispenser, click, 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 dollar, dollar, dollar. Right now, we're going to turn this whole thing upside down. All of a sudden, there's no diversity in fuel source. It's all electrons, but the transaction will be as diverse as the magnificently innovative American business mind can make it. Look at everything else in technology. Look how diverse everything that you do is now, the business models that support everything that you do, and start superimposing that onto the fueling transaction of the future. And then ask yourself who can win. Well, I'll tell you what, we're positioning ourselves for that. And the fact that we have fixed costs to deploy the infrastructure, no variables, no risks, either in time or dollars on infrastructure build out, and then zero unit cost for energy makes us uniquely positioned to take advantage of what is going to be, from a consumer point of view, just the most fantastic innovation that they've ever experienced. The average American spends $5,000 a year on fuel and maintenance for their internal combustion engine vehicle. $5,000 after-tax dollars. Can you imagine what it would be like if those $5,000 were returned to the local economy through spending in restaurants and other businesses and all that sort of stuff, because they're no longer going out of the tailpipe off to Russia, Saudi, Venezuela, Nigeria, and all the other places, which, as I have already said several times in this call, would probably not be our best mates if it wasn't for the fact that they have the black stuff.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're hammering home so many things, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about all of the things that you guys have already done. I mean, I remember how in the beginning, the whole structure, the base of that wasn't in the air; it was down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And now it's up at the top, right? And
we want that flood proofing.
And you've got that top panel, which follows the sun, yes, right? Which is your patented system. It doesn't spin around. It actually doesn't. So it doesn't, if you got a truck that's parked next to you, you're not going to tear the top of the truck off. It's just the way that it tilts and follows the sun. I know that I saw it not long ago that you're looking at, instead of having to plug the car in, you just drive up on top of it and it's charging, right?
Patent pending.
Wireless charging, right? Patent pending.
We've had a good history. We've had a good history of winning the patents that we've gone after, by the way.
Yeah. And listen, it's not just those patents, I believe. So you've got for streetlights. Think about this for a minute. So you don't have a garage in a lot of cities, New York, San Francisco. You're parking on the street. How do you charge your electric vehicle? I don't know. Has anybody thought about that? Yeah, you did. Light posts, but yep. Solar and wind with battery storage within the post itself, right? So, all kinds of innovative, like way down the road thinking, but it's all going to become, I think, a critical component. Here's the reality of it. We are not ready to go 100% renewable. I don't think we'll hit it by 2050. I understand these countries want to have, no combustion engine. I don't think it's realistic because we don't have the path. I don't think we have a clearly defined path of how we're going to get there. We're demonizing the oil and gas companies, and all the funds pulled out, big pension funds, hedge funds. We're no longer going to support fossil fuel investment. Pretty dumb. Because here's the deal. What is this proving right now with Russia and Ukraine? We are still extremely dependent upon that. And we're seeing inflation, which I thought was going to be transitory. Now, I don't think it is going to be transitory because I think Russia's in the penalty box for at least 10 years. minimum. And I think high energy prices are here to stay for a while. I don't think oil is going back down to $50 a barrel that it's been for the last 7 years. I think that now, because of all of this, we're going to see elevated fuel prices. And the problem is we didn't put together a plan with fossil fuels as the bridge to, this is where we're going, this is where we're going to be, this is where we want to be 100% renewable. But we recognize that these guys are part of the solution to get us there, right? Because we built an entire infrastructure over the last hundreds of years to support that. And now we have to build a whole new infrastructure, right? And it's not just going to happen. It's not because you want it. You can just flip the switch and it's there, right? However, you are one of the fastest solutions to renewable out there at the moment. I mean, because of the fact that you don't have to tie to the grid. It's independent. You can drop it. It's ready to go. I mean, so in my head, I'm thinking as I'm reading how Washington is going to, by 2030, have all electric vehicles. And I'm thinking, you better start working on that infrastructure like right now. I mean, like right now, if you want to hit that goal, right?
So urgency, you won't be surprised to hear, is our friend. We like urgency. As I've already mentioned, it takes months and in many cases, years to put grid-tied infrastructure in place. By the way, this does not mean that there won't be grid-tied. I'm often accused of being an absolutist, and people think it's, you know, if it's you either do what we're doing or nothing else. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, you just brought up several excellent points there. Oil companies are not the enemy. Oil companies are vast sources of funds and innovators who can be tremendously instrumental in moving us to the energy solutions of the future, right? One thing I learned as a young man in Scotland is, see if there's going to be a major knuckle up in the street, you don't start fighting with your own friends, right? But you keep your eyes on the target. Okay, I've carried that with me through my life. Basically, don't interfight and bicker with your friends. Get everybody on board. Okay, urgency is good news for us because we can do it rapidly. We will be a significant piece of this. We're not the only ones who are thinking about this. Now, when I go to Washington, D.C., what I'm increasingly hearing is 25% of all charging infrastructure needs to be locally generated, locally stored electricity, so that we do have a fuel system that's defended from the grid. But we're going to do this with the utilities. By the way, many big utilities are already our customers. We're not competing with them. We're just giving them another tool in their tool bag to do what their mission is, which is to provide reliable and inexpensive electricity to all of their customers, including the future EV drivers. We're not enemies with the oil companies at all. Many of them are investing heavily in EV charging infrastructure and other green. You look at Total Energies. You look at BP, you look at Shell, look at the investments that they're making in this space. We're working with them, not against them. We're not fighting with any of these people, right? They are not the enemy. That is not the problem. The problem is the fact that we need to have reliable and expandable and scalable fueling infrastructure and just general energy infrastructure in the future that does not rely upon us going out to speak with who our real enemies are. And that's what we're really targeting here. But I will say this to you. Some of this actually just comes down to courage in leadership, because the simple fact of the matter is, and I've said this often, these United States of America could, with a stroke of a pen, become the first nation in the world to have essentially zero OPEX where energy is concerned, to be totally energy independent, to be able to put all the time and energy and infrastructure and risk and everything that we've put into these very unreliable and gossamer thread hanging fuel sources, put all of that into all the other wonderful innovative things that we can do. We can do this. We have the capability of doing it. It's overstated to talk about the Kennedy moment, you know, the moonshot moment, but that was a great example of what the US is capable of doing. I look back to what happened when the US got involved in the Second World War and how it utterly changed the future of humanity forever and in nothing but a good way. When the US puts its mind to things, it can do tremendous things. But as Churchill said, Americans will always do the right thing, but not until they've exhausted every other potential. And he was sort of joking, and he was allowed to say he was half American. His mother was an American. But what I want to make sure of is that actually we do not allow others to get ahead of us in this race, not in transportation, not in energy. What will the world look like if we wake up one day and we find that we still have huge OPEX where energy and things like that's concerned, because we're still extractive, we're still relying on the last lumps of coal, the last drops of oil and everything else like that, while other nations have invested in removing any of those hurdles to their growth, to their competitiveness, and frankly, to their warfighting capabilities. This is not a good place for us or the planet to be. It's not a good place for geopolitically or anything else. We can do this, but it's going to require some leadership, and I mean real leadership. I'm not talking about all the jaw. I mean actually doing stuff and getting involved, and we may even have to take some discomfort in some areas for a little while. That's how you get things done. You look at what's going on in Europe right now. I'm fascinated watching this. The Europeans are terrified by the notion of removing their reliance upon Russia's natural gas. Oil is easier for them because there are other sources, but gas, they're terrified. You know, the Germans, over 40% of the gas that they consume, they're getting from the Russians. And this is why you're seeing so much flip-flopping. And this is why we're seeing still sending billions of dollars a day into Putin's war chest so he can continue to prosecute his war using European money to do that. And they say, well, we can't not do that because it would be disruptive. I don't know about you, but I'm not convinced that we're not sitting on the verge of a potentially much worse war here. That will be very disruptive. So what I would say is take the pain now. Because you're going to make the investment. If we go to war, it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more in terms of treasure and people's lives and everything else, and disruption. Take the pain now. During peace, solve the problems now. Remove the funding for that future potential war now, before we ever get involved in it. We have the technology, we have the ability, we simply lack the will and the courage to get it done.
What's really interesting about your point that you're making here is it's really interesting, because that pipeline that was going to go from Russia to Germany was just going to make them even more dependent upon Russia, right? Yeah. And as you think about all of this, and you think, it's just like, it's all, you know, I always believe that in any bad situation, something good can come from it, right? You can make lemonade from lemons. There's always a good outcome. And as much as there's a lot of negativity out there right now, a lot of uncertainty about the war. I mean, it was the last thing we needed after 2 years of COVID, right?
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Last thing we could have wanted to have happen, but it's happening. And a lot of things, even through COVID, the light is being shined on a lot of issues and magnifying the like, for example, our dependence on product being made overseas, which your product, by the way, is made in sunny San Diego. Just I want to make that very clear. But supply chain issues have become a real headache, right? And if you're the CEO of a company in the US and you are not looking at that whole supply chain issue problem and saying, boy, if I've got an $80,000 truck that is really done, but I got it in a parking lot and I can't sell it because I'm waiting on a $150 chip.
Yep.
Right? That if you're not reevaluating where you're getting all of your products from and considering maybe we need to start making those chips right here in the good old US of A, then you shouldn't have your job. I think you should be gone. Right. That's my opinion. And I do believe that is going to benefit the United States, right, in the long run. I mean, we have a chip plant being built in Ohio by Intel. We have one being built by Samsung in Texas. When's the last time a chip plant was built in the United States, right? So good things are happening. And I think even with this oil and gas, the energy independence portion, there is a bright light being shined on that whole issue, right? Just like I want to put a bright light on the fact that, you know, not having your stations throughout, you know, the country in strategic places where we need to have them in case the grid it does fail or shut down, because the loss of life. So when I reached out to you and said, is there a possibility that your product could be considered, a homeland security product? And, you responded back to me right away, and said, here's the article that I wrote on that very issue. I mean, this was an off the cuff thought that I had, and I reached out to you as I had it, and you responded right away with a link to an article. And I thought, Jesus, not only is this guy like on the same page as I am, he's like 30,000 steps ahead of me. But I read that article, which was incredibly comprehensive, and the numbers that were in it were staggering. It was like, my Lord, not only is it possibly catastrophic, it is far beyond what I even imagine how catastrophic it could be in a very short period of time. I think it was 2 weeks, you said, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks, where we lose a good portion of our population.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And by the way, the thing to be clear about is I was nothing but a curator when I wrote that article. None of these were original thoughts. I just did save people the trouble. I did the research. I looked at the congressional findings. I looked at the science, and I looked at the technology, and I just put it all together in one article. So if you read it, I don't deal in opinions. I mean, I have lots of opinions, but I don't ever put them out there as fact. Right. This is just a curation of simple facts about where we are. And you're right. It's really very alarming. As I've often said, you don't need to bomb this country into submission. All you got to do is turn our power off, and it's actually not very difficult to do that. And I just outlined that in the article. And if that information is freely available to me, presumably it is to the bad guys as well. But I want to come back, if I may, to the points you made about Made in America, because this is also something that's very near and dear to my heart. I care a great deal about this. We're very, very happy to be manufacturing our products in Southern California, although believe me, I've had lots of advice to offshore it and nearshore it and everything else because, of course, of cheaper labor and everything. We're bound and determined to show that our team of veterans, disabled workers, immigrants, God knows I'm one, and other fine American contributors can do a better job than if we offshore or nearshore or anything else. And this is the point I really want to make, where you're talking about manufacturing in the United States. I do believe that we should be much more independent and much more self-sufficient where manufacturing is concerned. But I'll tell you what I don't want to see. I don't want to see a bunch of bureaucrats making up rules and tariffs and everything else like that, which are anti-competitive, putting us in that position. Because before you know it, what we are is just a rentier state with a bunch of people who can't think and rely upon the government to force us into doing well because we can't compete with others. No, that would be absolutely anti-American and anti-innovative and anti-everything else. What we need from government actually is to create a playing field where innovation and competitiveness is championed to such a degree, because we know we have it. But many years ago, I was in India with at the time our Energy Secretary Rick Perry, and on a convention, and he was talking about selling the Indians natural gas and oil as a means to rebalance our trade deficit with India. And what I said to him was, I don't know about selling oil and gas to the Indians to rebalance our trade deficit. That's a finite resource, and you're digging up stuff from underneath our dirt and you're sending it across to the Indians and giving it, and then we never get it again. And what I told him at that time, and I mean this sincerely, America's greatest resource by far resides between the ears of its citizens. That is where you should be investing. Put all of your energy into making us more innovative and more competitive. We don't need tariffs to stop the Chinese selling stuff to us. What we need is to be able to produce better products for less money than they can. And don't forget, we already have the best tariff in the world. It's called the Pacific Ocean, the largest body of water in the world. You got to ship stuff across there. That's an expense that's going to be added to your business. We don't need tariffs. We need encouragement for innovation. And again, not jaw, action. To get us where we're going, and let's make use of the most fantastic American attribute. Look throughout history. Any great event that's happened to this country and the impact that we've had on the world has come about as the result of some fantastic innovative thinker who had the freedom to act and was often supported to do so. So I just think it's very important that we emphasize competitiveness and innovation, not closing down doors and building walls.
We emphasize taking risk, right?
Yes.
Investing.
Yes.
Instead of demonizing profit.
Yes.
The whole thing is just insane to me because, there are some very profitable businesses out there. I get it. They're also some of the biggest employers and create a lot of jobs. And, I've always had kind of an issue taxing capital gains, and not because here's the deal. I worked hard to save some money to invest.
Yep.
Right. And I risked that capital on an investment that there is no guarantee on, but I'm risking the capital. And if I make a profit on the capital that I already paid taxes on once, I'm going to get taxed again. But if I lose all that money, am I going to get a refund like for risking it? No, I'm not. Right. I mean, I just lose the money. And that, to me, does not incentivize anyone to really want to take risk, right? And I think that we should have a program where if you want to start a company that, could change the world and make it a better place, and, you don't have to pay taxes for 2 years because we know you're going to struggle, right? We're going to help you get through that beginning portion. Now, I know there will be companies that will, try to work the system, but you just got to come up with a better mousetrap then. But the bottom line is what you're talking about is, yes, incentivize innovation, right? Taking risk. And because there are, I will tell you, Desmond, that I meet with a lot of companies, and there are some small companies with some CEOs that have these amazing ideas and solutions to problems that we have right now today. And they can't get funded from Wall Street because they're too tiny, they're too little, and they get these predatory lenders that really don't give a shit about their business. They just want to make some money by giving them some really crappy, cap structure. And I look at how broken this whole system is. And I think to myself, and the retail investor as well doesn't take the time to educate themselves to identify those companies that really could make an impact, not just to your wallet long term, but could also do real good for the world for many, many years to come, right? And those are things that you can get behind, that maybe you didn't come up with the idea, but you sure as hell can support the person that did come up with the idea, right? So I look at, and I don't want to get too far off track, because I want to get back to what you guys are all about. So you've got the one product behind you that you continually seem to improve,
yes.
Right? And I think that so you just did an acquisition recently.
Yes.
Could you give us a little highlight on what the acquisition is and why you did it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really happy to have an opportunity to talk about it. I've done a fair bit of M&A. I was probably pretty shit at it when I first started out, but believe me, I'm a learner, especially when I'm paying for the pleasure. So this one, honestly, as far as strategic acquisitions go, I think it's very hard to find one that could be less or could be more qualified. We have, of course, been a consumer of battery technology for many years, because of all of our products, of course, generate and store all of their own energy. In fact, if you can see me and you look where I'm pointing at right here, this enclosure here is full of energy storage. So we're converting sunlight into electricity, and then we're storing air. Why? Well, because you want to be able to fuel your vehicle at nighttime too, and not just when the sun's shining, right? During inclement weather, whatever else. By the way, this darker area here, if I can, that thing that you're seeing right there, that's the emergency power panel too, just to let you know what you're looking at. Anyway, we've been consumers of batteries for 10 years. As a consumer of batteries, two things happen. You're buying them, well, you're giving up margin, right? The second thing is you are now, you have a risk, a supply chain risk, essentially. where that's concerned. And if there's a third, less obvious, but still quite important thing for our business, which is you are not in control of the product development cycle that moves forward. You're essentially using stuff that's being developed by others to do other things, and you're trying to make it work in your product. With this acquisition, we solved for all of those things. So let's just talk about the economics of it first of all. We bought this company, and the impact of that right off the bat will be we get all the gross margin recapture. And so I can tell you that batteries are by far the single largest line item of expense in manufacturing our product, about 30% actually. And so to get the margin back from that, the immediate impact from that will be about a 7% reduction in our BOM costs. And BOM is the biggest, by far the biggest part of this. That 7% reduction in the short term will then be matched again by, we believe, at least another 7% reduction in cost, because now our engineering teams are working together. Now that we've acquired the battery company, our engineering teams and their scientists and everybody working together to find other ways to reduce our costs. So both of these things together should result in about a 15% reduction in our costs to produce a product, which is a very, very significant. So that part works well. We've defended our supply chain because we're now not in a position where that battery manufacturer who we acquired is trying to pick and choose between us and potentially other customers that come down the road. We can make sure that we serve both. We can invest in growth. We can do what we need to do to make sure that we don't lose any of that business. And then just from an economics on the deal point of view, well, we doubled our IP portfolio, so that's more moat, more barrier to entry. We already have a lot of very good patents in our products, but now we've got twice as many, which doesn't hurt. The moat is important, no question about that, particularly when you're at the beginning of a massive, Goldman Sachs called this a $6 trillion infrastructure build out. That's where we're playing. That's our TAM, if you like. That's what we're involved with here. And so the bigger the moat, the better we're going to be where that's concerned. And then on the economics of the deal, as I say, it was an all-stock deal. So no cash impact, no debt. By the way, I have been the recipient of many offers of the kind of crap financings that you're talking about, toxic death spiral, stuff like that. And my old Scottish tightness with money, discipline. You know the joke, how copper wire was invented, Tim?
No.
Two Scotsmen fighting over a penny. Right? We take money seriously. I don't think we're tight. I think we're canny with it. They're actually very generous. But anyway, the all-stock deal, no cash, no debt. I've never done any type of toxic financings, and I never will. I don't need money now. I'm well capitalized. We've got a great growth path ahead of us. I firmly believe we'll cash flow before we'll ever need to raise money again. And we bought this deal. We bought this company right again, without cash, without debt. We paid a very good multiple for it. Battery companies are valued across a broad spectrum. On the commodity end, at the cell level, you're getting 2 times revenue. At the high technology end, you're getting 25 or 30 times revenue as a valuation. Well, we paid commodity end valuation for the high technology side of the business. We paid, as I say, in all stock. The shares that we paid with are restricted, so that there's no chance of them being dumped into the marketplace. And even when the restrictions are lifted, I built in a protection, which is that the seller, which was a fund, essentially a private equity fund, can never sell more than 4% of the weekly trading volume at any time, which, as you'll know as an investor, is immaterial. It's irrelevant. So we basically completely defended our position where that was concerned. But the great news is the seller is now a 10% holder in BEEM Global Equity, approximately, thereabouts. And the last thing they want to do is anything destructive. On the contrary, they're influential in the industry, and they're doing everything they can to help us continue to grow the business. So
I want to highlight a really, really important part here. And you just laid out my favorite way to do acquisitions, right? And why is it so critical and important? So back in my day, I'm older. So, back in the day, I can remember when a company would do an acquisition of another company, and there was that honeymoon period where,
oh yeah,
right, where that just meant that whoever was in, senior positions in the company that got acquired, in about 6 to 12 months, you likely were looking for another job, because the acquiring company would then try to take over and put in all their people and take over and, basically make that company this company. dumbest thing ever, right?
Yep.
Because what you were buying was the people, and maybe they aren't good accountants or good marketers or whatever. You bought them for something that they are really good at.
Yep.
And the whole intent of buying them should have been, let's let them continue to do what they're really good at and take all that other crap that they have to deal with away from them so they can focus even more on doing what they're really good at, right?
Exactly.
And when you pay somebody cash, they don't have to stick around. They don't buy into your vision. They don't buy into anything. That's what it tells me, is like, I want to get paid and I'm out of here. And I'm probably going to go open up something that's going to compete with you down the line. Right?
Exactly. No, we want, I'm, I say this all the time. Humans are great at building walls and terrible at building bridges. I like building bridges. I want everybody on the same team, pulling on the same rope and in the same direction. And the way to do that is to incent them. They are owners. They are equity holders in BEEM. And by the way, just to let you know, one of the other things I'm very proud of here, every employee of this company who's been here for more than 6 months and who merits it gets a little equity. Everybody. I mean, the guy pushing a broom down on the shop floor.
Awesome.
Yeah. I want them owning this. I want them believing it. We're mission driven, but we're profit motivated. It's a very rare opportunity. Before we got on this call, you talked about how we would appeal to young people because we're helping the planet and the environment and all that, and we are. But the simple fact is, look at what we're actually really doing. We're enhancing energy security. We're improving the geopolitical situation. We're creating an opportunity to make a lot of money. We're creating an opportunity to save consumers money. I've never done anything in my life which was popular on both sides of the aisle. Right, but now I am. The lefties love us because we're saving the environment, and the right wingers love us because we're providing security and an opportunity for huge profitability. And they're both right. There's no argument here, right? We've created.
Why is this so impactful to me? That it's not just the top tier. It's not just your executive team. It's you are everybody. The guy that sweeps the floor in your company after 6 months has the opportunity. He receives stock. Right?
Yes.
That's how you bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Oh, yes.
Right? That's how you do it.
I tell them all the time. Your salary, your paycheck will pay your bills. Your equity will create wealth for you. And believe me, I'm in San Diego here. If you're pushing a broom in San Diego, I'll tell you what your hope of owning a home is. Zero. Okay, unless you work for BEEM Global. What I tell them, just don't spend it, keep it, don't trade it. So like a dad, right? I'm like a dad talking to kids. Just sit on it, forget about it, and one day you will own a home. And you had no hope of doing that. And so when the guy down the street says, "I'll give you $1 an hour more," or something like that, you think very hard about that. That'll pay your bills, but it won't create wealth for you. We'll create wealth for you. Own the company and make it successful. It's a very powerful tool. And I actually do believe in democratization of access where merit drives it, right? Again, this is another fantastic thing about America. I know this. I came here with nothing, an immigrant with nothing, okay? And yet look where I am now. This nation is a nation where you can do tremendously well. If you merit it, the opportunity is there. And we're creating a little America at BEEM. We're saying, come here, work hard, make an effort. Don't be a whiner, get on with stuff, and you can do fantastically well here. By the way, look, we have whiners too. We're not allowed to not have
No, I get it. These are important things to me, right? Because look,
me too.
I want to make this very obviously. I'm enamored with the product, right? I love the product. I love the idea, the concept. I love the fact that you have the patents and the protection and the moat and all of this stuff. But I also, look, you can have a great product, you can have a great service. If you don't have great leadership, I think the odds are stacked against you. That is my belief. That is why I will not invest in a company unless I have the opportunity to look the person that's leading the charge in the eye and have a conversation and understand who that, or at least get a feeling for who that person is and what drives them, right?
Yeah.
So when you can do that, and I feel your passion. If somebody can't feel your passion, they got a problem. I mean, it beams from you, no pun intended, but it does. I mean, it just comes out of you because you're passionate about it. This is not a scripted deal, right? This is, we didn't sit and write all this stuff up before we hopped on. This is you talking from your heart. And those things are important to me because it shows me that you care about your employees, you care about the company, you care about the world, you care about the United States of America, you care about all these things passionately. And you're not just caring about it, you're doing something about it, right? So there is so much more that you and I could talk about. I want to make sure that we get a pretty good coverage of all the products. I mean, we talked about the street pole for a brief moment, but if you think about the future, that is an incredibly impressive thing. Wind, solar, storage in a street pole, so that when people are parking on the street, they have a place to charge, right?
You made the perfect comment earlier. You pointed out that actually most of the world doesn't have big, wide, flat parking lots. Okay, that's a kind of a almost uniquely American thing, and even Western American thing, right? If you think about actually the way most people live, they live in high-rise buildings and in pretty compact cities, right? And so that means that curbside charging is going to be essential. You're going to have to be able to charge your vehicle on the curb because most people live in environments where they don't, it's not all a white picket fence in a single-family residence, right? And that's true here. And you think New York City has 300,000 lamp standards. I'm convinced that in the future, every fifth one will be an EV charging spot. So what's the problem with a lamp standard? It has power. So that seems really obvious. But the problem is it only has enough power to run a light bulb. And the amount of energy that's required to run a light bulb is quite a lot different than the amount of energy that's required to run a 2-ton automobile with you and me sitting in it and golf clubs or whatever else, right? And so what we've done is we've figured out a way to transition a lamp standard. We just remove the existing lamp standard and we replace it with EV standard, which is our patented product. And that has a light wind generator, because actually in places like New York, man-made canyons, there's a lot of wind, reliable wind at street level. Unusually, there isn't out in the boonies, but in those types of man-made canyons, there is. So we've got a light wind generator. We also have a patented tracking solar array. So we're generating electricity from the sun and from the wind. Wind often blows when the sun's not shining too, which is another really cool thing. And then the column is full of electronics and our proprietary energy storage solution. And so we take all the energy from the wind and the solar. But here's the other thing. We also take the energy from the streetlight circuit. So during the daytime, we get all of that because the light's turned off. At nighttime, we replace that 1,000-watt sodium bulb with a 200-watt LED lamp that produces the same amount of lumens, but we're able to take all that energy and combine it into our energy storage. And now we can offer a meaningful charge at the curb, not just a little trickle for a light bulb, but a really meaningful fueling experience at the curb. We have that patented, not just in the United States, but also in Asia and in Europe. And I can tell you that, to me, that will probably be the biggest numerical seller that we have, because every city is covered in lamp standards and every city needs curbside charging. Now, just before I get off the subject, before anyone thinks, well, I don't get the big deal out of it, just think of a curb that you know and ask yourself, how would you get electricity to it? Who would you trench to? You're going to the nearest building, you're going to cut into their power, you need an easement, you need a lease, you need to do an electrical upgrade, you need to put another meter in, you're going to dig up the sidewalks, or you're going to go to the city, you're going to get their permission. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. But with our product, none of that is required. And that is the secret to, you got the Marine Corps out there. What do the Marine Corps do? Hit hard, hit fast, and win, right? Our products are designed to do the same thing in the war against the lack of EV charging infrastructure. Hit hard, hit fast, hit scalably, and win. Don't do siege mentality, right? Do not do siege mentality, because you're not going to win.
So I want to talk about a couple of accomplishments that you have. You have not had, as brilliant as all of this stuff sounds, it hasn't been exactly an easy path for growth for you, right? Let's talk about, San Diego. They don't want any, advertising and so forth. And that's, kind of a big thing, right? In San Diego, yep. Probably one of the hardest markets to get any kind of approved outdoor advertising stuff through.
We think the hardest. We believe the hardest.
What brilliant system did BEEM come up with that basically makes it so that, and I think it was a little company called Outdoor Media that you partnered up with,
Yeah.
that essentially what the way it works is the city needs charging stations, right?
Yes.
A big company needs to show that they are supporting the ESG initiatives, which are, you know, environmental, social, right? And BEEM comes up with this solution to show, giving the ability of a company to show that they are indeed supporting the movement to renewable energy by having their name on the canopy of your charging station, right? And they buy that from, or they secure those rights to have that name there through outdoor advertising. And it's a lease, right, essentially of that spot for X amount of years for X amount of dollars, which pays for the unit for the city, right?
Well, yeah, I think so. Actually pays for the unit for us.
Well, yes.
So, yeah. This goes back to what we talked about earlier, just the fantastic diversity of business models that are going to come around in fueling, right? So you're absolutely right. Well, we looked at EV charging. We said, you know what, selling kilowatt hours is not that interesting unless you were a large and entrenched monopoly, like a utility, right? You're going to sell an awful lot of kilowatt hours at 15 cents a kilowatt hour to ever get back the gigantic, massive amount of capital you're going to have to pour into the infrastructure. That's why utilities are set up the way they are, basically, because otherwise no one would ever be able to competitively bring electricity to everybody's homes and all that sort of stuff, right? So we said, okay, that EV charging could be a tough way to make money selling kilowatt hours, but that's maybe the ketchup in the steak restaurant. Let's figure out what the steak is. Right, we give away ketchup, but let's sell steak. And it turns out, yes, you're absolutely right. You look at that thing behind me. For someone who's in the outdoor media side, what they're looking at is a lot of real estate there, right? And by the way, not unpopular real estate like billboards and stuff like that. That people see them, they get the message, but nobody likes them. Nobody says, I wish we had a lot more billboards on our street, right? Okay. However, people do say, I wish we had a lot more solar powered electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And they're going to say it more and more in the future, because here's what we're bringing here. We're saying we can monetize the deployment of the infrastructure through using sponsorship and naming rights deals, okay? And I'll come back to how it works for the sponsor. It's really important because it's actually a little bit more complex than it appears on the surface. We can monetize this infrastructure using sponsorship and naming rights deals. We can bring a fantastic amenity to a city because they need the fueling infrastructure. They're all trying to reduce their carbon footprints and commuting and stuff like that. It's a big impact on that. So we can bring this fantastic infrastructure to a city, and we can do it without them having to use taxpayers' money to pay for it, because we use a sponsorship or a naming rights program. Now, what does the consumer get? The average person in the street gets to drive on sunshine, guilt-free, environmental impact-free, and the best free of all, free. Why? Because we have no unit cost for energy to recapture. All we need to do is fund the deployment of the infrastructure. There's no utility bill, there's no escalation, there's no future unfunded liability that we have to worry about. So we just give it away for free, because it turns out it costs $10 to collect $1 anyway, right? With all the billing and all that sort of stuff. No, just come and fuel for free, American citizen. We want you to drive on sunshine for free. Now, corporate sponsors looking at this and saying, okay, so let me get the hang of this. I get my street presence on every corner in a way that's fantastically popular with the public. Right? Driving on sunshine, brought to you by your friends at, fill in the corporate blank, right? For the first time in your life, you can drive for free without any impact of any sort, geopolitical, economic, or anything else like that. And you can do it because of the benevolence of me, Mr. Corporate Big Money Guy, all right? That's brilliant on every street corner, right? If you're a company that's run gas stations forever, you're losing your street presence. You're big oil, right? BP, Shell, your gas stations are going away without a doubt. You're going to lose your street presence. And anyway, they were never popular, right? They were essential, but not popular. Now you get to put your name all over infrastructure that everybody loves, and they think you're, and then one never wants to exploit disasters. But think about what happens when the power goes out, Tim. Now all of a sudden you're on the 6 o'clock news every night with first responders plugging into the thing that's got your corporate branding all over it, saying you delivered this, right? Everybody, you're a hero. As I tell people, this is not a press release event. This is a history book event. For the first time in history, human beings are able to move around without having any cost of fuel to do that. It's a way of democratizing access to it. And again, if you want to go back to that, about making people wealthy, think about all the poor people that pour everything that they have into their gas tank. Now they'll be able to go to work and everything else like that without paying for fuel. But here's the other nice thing for that corporate investor. For money that, frankly, if you think about how much TV advertising costs and all that sort of stuff, and you get 15, 20 seconds of hit from that, this is a multi-year global story. You made it possible to drive on sunshine for free. People in Paris will be talking about the fact that there are people driving on sunshine in America because of such and such a corporate customer. But behind the scenes, there's something else going on here. Our network develops millions of pounds of CO2 offsets a year. And because we own it, BEEM Global retains title to the network, we're able to make those offsets inure to anybody we want. So if you're a big corporate, and not only are you trying to get your name on ESG and green and clean and all that sort of stuff, but you're also trying to reduce your carbon footprint for two reasons. First of all, because you've made public commitments to do it. And secondly, because there's a real hard cost of carbon increasing all the time. Now we just say to Toyota as an inducement to be the sponsor, not only do you get all the branding and the naming rights and all that sort of stuff, but we'll also make all the carbon offsets available to you because we don't need them. And so it's a huge hard money win for the corporate sponsor. And you cannot say that about any other type of billboard player or anything else out there. So yes, fantastic win for everybody. And you're right, San Diego is very tough. It is a very tough environment. But I'll tell you, I like to put a positive spin on this. We didn't win over them, okay? Everybody won. They did this because they recognized the fantastic value of in the public benefit of this infrastructure. That's why they did it, and that's why we're moving forward with this initiative. And I can tell you something. I believe it will be the most fantastically profitable recurring revenue business I've ever been involved with, and I believe that the cities will drop like dominoes.
So I want to. So this is what I mean by knowing what you're investing in, right? I mean, we've not been talking that long, and if you can connect the dots to all the positives to this thing, right? And I always go into looking at something as to what can go wrong. Where's the landmine? Where's the weak link, right? I mean, yep. I really look for that because I have to understand my risk reward, right? So, but when you hear a story like this and you see the passion of it, and you just pointed out, ESG isn't going away. It is getting better. I think Canada just increased the carbon tax, I think 25% in Canada, right?
And you're going to see more and more of it.
And it's going to happen more, right? So, I mean, it's like, there is whether you believe that in the global climate and whether you believe that or not, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. The bottom line is, we need to do a better job by the planet, right? Yep. And I think everybody agrees that, sees it. You can see it with the weather patterns and the things that are happening. We need to address these issues. So, you are in the right place at the right time with the right product, with the right delivery system, free. And it's a win all the way across the board. It's not a win for just the big guy. It's a win all the way across the board. And what is frustrating to me is, why isn't this thing just taken? Why don't you have to build 10 more factories here in the United States because demand is so big? Right.
First of all, I will, and part of it, I will have to do that. It's firmly part of my plan. I mean, I've got to be careful about how the comments I make are taken. I firmly believe that we will get to full capacity in our 53,000 square foot facility here in San Diego. I firmly believe that we'll have to build many more of these, and when we do, we will still not be anywhere near keeping up with the requirements, the global or even the US requirements that come from this. But I will say this, Tim, part of the reason that I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do what we're doing right now is there is one thing wrong with being global, and you're right. It's always important to look at it. I'm a combination of paranoia and optimism. These are two important traits in my role, right? I'm looking for everything, every gotcha, distrustful of everything, worried that everyone's trying to have a go at us or going to hurt this company in some way, fiercely defensive about the company, but at the same time fiercely optimistic, because otherwise I wouldn't be the risk taker and I wouldn't be the growth engine that's going to be required out of this. But I'm so grateful to do things like this because it gives me an opportunity to solve the one problem that BEEM Global has, and that is that nobody understands us, or not nearly enough people do. They don't understand the products, they don't understand the business model, they don't understand our securities or our place in the market. We get flipped around by what's going on in the broader macro market. You can see by the way the stock's trading today, absolutely nothing to do with fundamentals. We're in far better condition today than we were yesterday, certainly than we were a year ago. And it's driven by people's lack of understanding of what we're doing, and that's what we're trying to solve.
And I want to make a really important point about this. You did that through a pandemic.
Oh, yes.
Through a pandemic.
We never shut down. We were deemed essential, by the way. We never didn't miss a day. Did not miss a day. I traveled, I worked, everyone came to the factory, no one took a day off. And on top of that, we took it seriously. We masked, we required vaccinations, we did everything else. And by the way, this is not a question of what we believe or don't believe. This is business experience. I will not allow any risk to enter the building. And if there's a doubt, I'll go for the safe route here. And we were pretty damn tough about it. I was ruthless about it. And I'm proud to say we never had a single employee infected here. We had 3 people contracted off-site. We caught them fast enough, we got them out of here, and we never had any type of an on-site event with it, and we continued to operate throughout the entire thing. And yes, grew our revenues during that period, in a small way admittedly, but grew our revenues.
You also got, is it GSA contract approval, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big deal, right? I mean,
yeah.
For anybody that doesn't understand what that is, can you just really quickly share what the GSA is?
The General Services Administration contract allows any federal entity to buy our products. It's been previously vetted, competitively vetted, and everything else. So it takes you from being in a position where God knows near impossible to sell to federal agencies and makes it to the point where it's practically point and click. And by the way, the great example of this, the U.S. Marine Corps. U.S. Marine Corps liked our products for many years. We've been involved in a bunch of future warfighting exercises with them. To them, getting liquid fuels off a forward operating environment is absolutely crucial, but also they're having to electrify all their vehicles because they're part of the federal government. They loved our product for many years. It was only when we got on GSA that we immediately got an order from them, because there was a contract vehicle in place that they could use to do it. It's actually really difficult when you're an innovator, because you're bringing a product that's not named, not broadly understood or anything else like that. So there's no contracting history. There's nothing, pickup truck is a pickup truck, right? So, which is the cheapest pickup truck, right? But there isn't another EV ARC, right? So we really had to go through a process to get that done. Obviously very proud to have them as a customer as well, particularly because we hire a bunch of them when they quit the Corps. But at any rate, yes, GSA very, very important to us. And here's the really cool thing about it. GSA contracts, as any of your listeners will know, generally are only available to federal entities. Ours, though, is available to any governmental entity that has a disaster preparedness requirement. And that's really key, because a lot of our, we sell to some city or something like that. They don't have the resources to put a big RFP together. They don't have the resources to go through all the competitive vetting. And we say, well, you can use the GSA contract. They say, no, you can't. It's only for federal. And we say, no. When you're filling it out, point out that part of the reason that you're buying the product is that you want disaster preparedness, fuel when the grid goes down, and emergency power and flood proof and hurricane proof and everything else like that. And if you click that box, then you can use the GSA contracts. Absolutely magnificent.
So, I mean, we have hit so many. Let me ask you a question, Desmond. How many shares fully diluted outstanding does BEEM currently sit on?
Yeah, so this is the other incredible part about our story, and I'm really glad you brought this up. This is one of those no good deed goes unpunished stories, right? If you look at where we are in terms of shared issued and outstanding, you will see that we are 1/10 of most of our peers. Okay, and I mean literally. So we're right around 10 million shares issued and outstanding, 11 million fully diluted. Now compare that to anyone else that you could find out there and that can call themselves a peer or near peer or anything else like that. And you'll find that everybody out there has 60, 70, 100, 200, 300 million shares issued and outstanding. We have 10. Why does that matter? Because at the end of the day, everything comes down to EPS, right? earnings per share. We have a lot less S than anybody else does out there. So the E factor is going to be much more impactful on the S, right? You take $10 million of earnings and put it into 10 million shares, you got a dollar. You put it into 100 million, you've got 10 cents. It's as simple as that. So how did we get there? Incredible discipline with our equity, incredible discipline with our equity, and the types of raises that we've done and all that sort of stuff. What sucks about this is that and this is the no good deed goes unpunished thing, is in the end of the day, I end up with a reduced market cap because I've been so disciplined with our equity. Had I issued another 20, 30 million shares, I'd have a market cap 3 or 4 times my size right now, because the street rewards the number of shares you have out there times the share price. And I have so few that I get negatively dinged from a market cap point of view. But I'll tell you what, Tim, I'll live with that. Because as I said earlier, if you do things fundamentally right, if you have discipline, if you avoid jumping after the shiny things in the short term, and if you build a great company with great products and you're careful with your equity and with your cash, in the end, you will reap the rewards. And we're in a position now where we have so few shares issued. I just did this transaction. I just bought a company, right? And I went from 9 million shares issued and outstanding to 10 million shares issued. I bought a company. I doubled our headcount, I doubled our IP, I doubled our addressable, and everything else like this. And I still have, a sixth or a tenth of the number of shares outstanding in anybody else. This gives me a huge amount of firepower, a huge amount of dry powder to do the inorganic growth stuff that we want to do. And as I say, the impact on EPS, that's where people should be looking.
I just want to share with you, because, maybe that sounds like a lot to people, 10 million. I consider a thin trading or a thinly, anything under 100 million shares to me is a very tiny outstanding share count. Anything under 100 million. So 10 million is like holy crap, right?
That's discipline. That's discipline.
And it's going to explain, I'm going to help it explain why that is. Because when you have a good company, yes, there are a lot of companies out there that you could call pump and dump, and they're really non-existent companies that they just rely on press releases to inflate the price of their stock, right? So that is not the case here. This is a real company with a real manufacturing facility, with a real plan to execute, with GSA approval, with a marketing component that can get a city these things basically paid for by somebody else. I mean, you start looking at all of these things, and this is a 10, what did you say, 11 million share?
Fully diluted.
What does that mean? That means that, when all this BS with the overall market is done, and look, I want to emphasize for small cap, micro cap stocks, we've been in a downtrend for 12 months. Mm-hmm. That sector, that space has been under pressure for 12 months. What was keeping us up was the Microsoft's, Nvidia's, Apple's. That's what kept. But if you look at those charts over the last 12 to 16 months, those companies, which have billions of shares outstanding, went parabolic. They went straight up in 1 year, essentially. That was not sustainable, but that was what was holding up the overall market, and they make up a big portion of the indexes.
Right.
So when we were making new highs, there were a lot of companies that were making 52-week lows. Now those have cracked, and that's why we're seeing 400-point down days in the NASDAQ, right? This company it went to $75 a share, had an unbelievable run. Part of that is because of the fact it all comes down to supply and demand. When you have something that has a meaningful announcement, and it might have been the GSA, I can't remember approval, but that sparked that. But when you have that small share stand, and you have a lot of demand, that means that run is going to happen. because then you get the people that don't even know the company that are just going to short it because they think, oh, it's a little nothing company and I'm going to short it because it had a big move. And then they got caught in the short squeeze, right? So
yeah, the only way they can get out is to buy.
But the bottom line is, if you were to take and look at this company and look at the security that we talked about in the beginning, the innovation and the patents that you have for products that without question are going to be needed. If you look at the way that you have gone to market, the fact that you take care of your employees, that you make acquisitions, you don't overpay, you bring them into the fold and make them also part of the vision to achieve the goal that the company has laid out, which is to drive on sunshine. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe it sounds too good for people to be true.
I think that's part
right.
of the problem.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
But it's true.
It doesn't matter to me, because eventually the patient are going to be rewarded for their, I mean, I guess I can't say that because, somebody come back on me someday if this doesn't work out. But, I would suggest, and I'm not telling anyone to buy the stock. It's not what I do. I'm not a financial analyst. I'm not telling anybody what to do. What I'm doing is I'm sharing the story, because my belief is if you're going to invest in a company, your edge as a retail investor with especially a company that has a tiny float and amount of shares outstanding, is your knowledge, is what you know about the company, who they are, and your conviction in what they're doing is going to be extremely successful. And the more you know about the company and the people leading that charge, the more conviction you should have, so that when we're in a market like this, instead of panicking when the price drops and selling it because you've got to save something, recognize that you're getting something on sale, like big time sale. And, Warren Buffett, famous quote, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There is an opportunity there. I will, from a technical standpoint, say that the stock is at a very interesting level here at about the 16 and change level. That seems to be the floor in the near term. It just had a nice pop, and it was consolidating beautifully right below the 200-day moving average, getting ready to maybe break out again. But I knew in my head that it probably wasn't going to happen, not because of BEEM, because of the overall market and the big boys that are still overvalued. And I think we're probably going to see some more pain in the overall markets, and 90% of stocks are going to follow what the overall markets do. But in this area where this stock is at, I'm not saying that you should just go all in, but I'll tell you what, if I wasn't in it, would throw a few bucks at it and get a starter position, and then follow the company, sign up for their email alerts so that when they send out a press release, you get notified, and just follow the company, see what they do, see if they execute, right? See if they do what Desmond says they're going to do. Now, does it always happen in the time frame that you wish it was going to happen? You've been working on that outdoor thing for I don't know how many years it was, right? But you never gave up, man. You kept right? I mean, but you could not pinpoint the exact timing of when it was going to happen, right?
Things never happen. I'm a very impatient person. Things never happen as quickly as I want them to. I'm constantly sort of wondering why things aren't happening faster. But I will tell you this: if you look at my history at this company, and you can do that, look back over the presentations I've made over the last decade, what you are going to see is that we have done everything that I said we were going to do. We do not strategically reorganize to cover up our tactical failures. We keep our nose to the grind, and we do what we say we're going to do. And we've done everything we said we were going to do over the history. Often it's taken longer. And I'll just say this, where the investment is concerned, Tim, and it does kind of drive me nuts, this. We look at our volume's up. And people say to me, oh, everyone's selling your stock. Hey, hang on a minute. That means you don't understand a transaction. Everyone cannot be selling my stock. At least as many people are buying my stock as are selling them. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a transaction. And the disturbing thing, and you don't need to take my word for this, look it up. What you're going to see is that we're seeing an exodus or not an exodus is not the right word, but the selling that we are seeing is happening from retail, and it's being soaked up by institutional. And as I tell people all the time, go to New York City sometime. Those tall buildings didn't build themselves. They weren't free. There's a reason all that money's sloshing around there. And right now what's happening is they're buying, institutional buying, retail selling our stock, right? You got to ask yourself, are those guys in the institutions crazy? Or maybe are they taking a longer term view and they're doing what you're saying, which is they've done the research, they've looked at the product, they've looked at the IP, they've looked at the kind of contract wins, they've looked at what we're doing, and they've said, you know what, nothing's certain in life, but this one looks pretty bloody good.
You know what's funny about it is retail investors are emotional. Wall Street is not emotional.
No.
But they know that. But they know that retail is emotional.
Yep.
And they are short-term in thinking.
Yep.
And what they do is they use that against you,
Sure.
right? When they take out a what could be perceived as an area of support, and the stock is getting pounded every day. Look, they sell that, they create that fear. Fear is a powerful motivator, but you have to recognize this is a sliver of time. That's all it is, right? How much conviction do you have in the story? How much conviction do you have in Desmond? How much do we need this product? Is there a competitor? I mean, these are all things you have to look at and say, you're not going to take my shares.
Yeah.
You're not taking my shares.
I tell you, no one's taking mine.
And if you drive it lower, guess what I'm going to be? A buyer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm getting something on sale and I'm in this for the long haul. And when everybody else figures this stuff out, I'm going to do okay. You just gotta have to have that conviction, right? I mean, and the only way you get that is by doing things like this. That's my whole, and I want to thank you. Look, I know we missed, there's so much more that we could talk about. Right?
Yeah, we'd be here all day.
Drone products that you got in the works. You've got new product in the works. There's new innovations. We just don't have the time because I know you have things going on. I have things going on. But Desmond, I love this story. I mean, I absolutely love the story.
So
I think it's critical to our future for energy independence and a better energy source. I think, you know, and you're doing everything. You just said you are doing everything. You said, I've followed you for years and you're a good communicator. You fight for what you believe in. You're a fighter. That's the Scottish thing, I think, a little bit, maybe.
I'll tell you what I tell my children. If you want to be a good storyteller, believe the story. It's as simple as that. It doesn't take talent. It just takes belief. And I believe what I'm doing. And I know historically we have always done what we said we're going to do. And I have got no doubts or concerns about the fundamentals of this car. I can never guess what the stock's going to do or what the bigger market picture is going to do. But in the long run, I know what we're doing. I feel very, very confident about it.
And the reality is you can't control what the stock does. You have no control over that. I know retail,
just keep executing.
They get upset because you don't do a press release on something, or, you know, there hasn't been any press. Look, he's not out here to fluff the company up.
Nope.
Just because the stock is having a rough go.
Nope.
He's here to build a long-standing, world-changing company.
That's right.
That takes some time. So
that's right.
Be patient and relax. But the guy has done everything he said he's going to do. Right. And he hasn't destroyed the company's cap table in doing so. So chill. Take a chill pill and support the company and tell your friends about it and say, look at what this wonderful company that makes stuff right here in America is doing for our country. And maybe get them to put them on their radar, because that's how you make a difference. You support the company with conviction. That's how you do it. And you share the company's story with your friends and they share this. And that's how the consumer makes stuff happen for a company like this.
Yep.
That's simple. All right, Desmond, thank you so much for coming in. I want to do a follow-up with you, right? Maybe in a couple of months, and we'll figure out, or maybe
I'm looking forward to that.
a catalyst that's coming up, maybe that
I'm looking forward to that.
So
Do that.
thank you so much for coming in and doing this, and we will do a follow-up. And that's it. I'm gonna cut this this recording off.
A great pleasure. Thanks everybody for paying attention.
Hey there, all you stock market junkies. Thanks for tuning in to yet another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had BEEM Global, ticker symbol BEEM, Desmond Wheatley, CEO. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. Why not give us a share? And while you're at it, how about giving us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.